Welcome, everyone. My name is Joe Ammirato. I'm Senior Director of Product Management for ONTAP Data Protection and Data Services. With me for a presentation are a couple of people on my team. Charlotte Brooks, who's a Senior Technical Marketing Engineer, will co-present with me. And I have Craig Schultz here, who's a Senior Product Manager for this new product that we're going to talk about. And we also have scattered around the room some of the architects behind the new product. So feel free to go as detailed as you need to on your technical questions, okay? NetApp Data Availability Services is a data as a service solution for the hybrid cloud. So it's a solution for both on-premise and cloud workflows. And to follow what Dave said, this not only has to be cloudy, but it has to be cloudy for both on-premise business outcomes in addition to cloud business outcomes. And that means simplicity and speed to business outcome. So let me give you an example before I get into the presentation with one of the customers that are in early interaction with NetApp Data Availability Services. It's a Major League Baseball team. And you can pick your favorite sport. It applies to soccer and cricket. But in Major League Baseball in the United States, which is just about kicked off now in spring training, there's an arms race. They're signing players out of high school to multi-million-dollar contracts. When they mature into the major leagues, especially the pitchers, they get tens of millions of dollars a year. And so in response to this arms race to get the most talent possible, the major league teams are using IoT in their stadiums and in their minor league complexes to measure players' health, to measure their development process, and to measure their performance. So for example, in the stadium, they've outfitted the stadium so you can measure the speed balls hit off of a bat, or how fast the ball is approaching the plate from 60 feet, 6 inches, or the revolutions per minute that the ball is taking as it's in its flight, 60 feet, 6 inches. The spin, is it horizontal? Is it vertical on the curveball? What's the depth, horizontal versus vertical? These are competitive advantages you can get by measuring data on-prem. And because the data is so extensive, these types of teams can't afford to have all of this data on-prem. They need the agility and budget flexibility of the cloud. So they need a solution that captures data on-prem, but gives them the agility to move it to the cloud and take advantage of data insight that you can get on these analytics in the cloud. And that's what this new product is about. And these Major League Baseball teams don't have the time to understand NVMe, or what is an aggregate, or what is an SVM. They simply want to protect their data and perform AI and machine learning leveraging the cloud. So that's what this product is about, speed to business outcome for the generalist, specifically the IT generalist. So what we're going to cover today is I'll cover what is NetApp Data Availability Service. And by the way, we use an acronym for short because it is a bit of a mouthful. We use NDAS as an acronym for that. And then I'll turn it over to Charlotte, who will go over what it means by hybrid cloud first architecture. And she'll give you a demo of the product and give you a sense of what we mean by simple, fast business outcomes for the IT generalist. And then we'll follow that. I'll come back up and give you a deeper look into the architecture and how these IT generalists can use NDAS as a portal to gain additional business insight in addition to data protection. Okay? So let's start at the top with what is NetApp Data Availability Services, or NDAS. NDAS is a cloud resident application. So it lives in the cloud. And one of the benefits of this for our IT journalist customers is they don't need to worry about taking an app from some website, bringing it down into their on-premise infrastructure, having to buy servers and provision, all that. They simply go in the first instantiation to AWS Marketplace, click, and they're off and running. So it's a cloud resident application. And there are other piece components of the solution that reside in the cloud that we'll get into as we get in through the presentation. In addition, this is a hybrid cloud solution, which means we orchestrate business outcomes both on-premise, in the cloud, and a combination of the both. So, yay! Thank you, Dave. So we leverage SnapMirror, which is a replication engine that moves data around on-prem, and we've extended it to the hybrid cloud to enable our customers to be able to have workflows that work on both on-premise and in the hybrid cloud, and we'll show you more about that in a moment. The UI UX, or the user interface, is designed to abstract SnapMirror, SVMs, all that storage jargon, and allow our customers to focus on getting simple, fast business outcomes. And you'll see that in the demonstration that Charlotte will take you through in a moment. Since it's a data as a service platform, our aspiration here for our customers is to take their initial data creation and follow it through a life cycle. And by that I mean, once you create the data initially on your primary system, you typically, in addition to performing your mission critical workloads, you want to protect it, either with backup or disaster recovery or something we call business continuity. You may then move it to the cloud to be able to leverage some of the services that Dave was referring to in the previous presentation. And then once you're finished with the data, you may want to archive it for long-term use. And so NDAS is a orchestration solution that helps the customer manage that entire data lifecycle, on-prem, hybrid cloud, from soup to nuts, so to speak. And finally, it's not only about data protection, but it's enabling the generalist to get fast business outcomes and additional insight into their data. Analogy I like to use is when we make money, hopefully we make a lot of it, right? You tend to want to protect it, you bring it to the bank, so it's protected and safe. But to grow, you may move it to a 401k for future growth. Likewise, with our customers' data, they need to protect it for safekeeping, but they need to move it potentially to the cloud to gain additional business insight to enable their businesses to grow and compete. And that's what another value of this product is. And on that plane about additional business insight, what we're finding is most of our customers start with primary data, as you can see from the graphic here, on site. Now with the advent of hyperscaler services available in the cloud, our customers are now starting to look at the hybrid cloud to extend their infrastructure from on-prem to gain a little bit more nimbleness, flexibility, and budget flexibility. So as they leverage the hybrid cloud, their primary data gets more leverage, and that's what this graphic is about. The more you leverage the hybrid cloud and gain that synergy between on-prem and cloud, your primary data gets more leverage for your business. And initially, it's with backup workflows to the cloud, but now we see our customers leveraging the cloud for disaster recovery, compliance, and archive. And with NDAS, we want to take that journey a little bit further than just data protection and get additional leverage on the primary data by enabling the ability to perform analytics, data discovery, and other customized applications on that protected data in the cloud.
When you say applications and analytics, are you offering something kind of built into the service, or is it something that the customer has to bring in?
Both. What we want to do is, what we're aspiring to do is create a portal that allows you to leverage existing services that you may find, as Dave alluded to, in Amazon or Azure. And we'll get into why this is uniquely possible with NDAS. But we'll also allow customers may have their own applications too, and we'll facilitate that onboarding. It's sort of a single pane of glass where you have your protection data workflows and the services that you want to perform on that data, all within a single pane of glass.
So you said single pane of glass. Is that the same portal that you're using for NetApp Cloud Services, the one which was showed at NetApp Insight in in November. Is it the same kind of portal where you connect on cloud and you can do all kind of operations?
Each of those applications that you saw have their own SaaS portal. In addition, NDAS has its own, but it's through the AWS marketplace. It doesn't have a SaaS portal.
Not a cloud or something like that.
It doesn't have a SaaS portal infrastructure. It's resident in the marketplace. Okay.
And the end result of, let's say, using your service to move data to AWS is the data resides on EBS, or? Yes,
and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail, but what it does is SnapMirror is extended to move the data to an S3 object repository, both the data and the metadata, to the extent that you have almost a universal file system without ONTAP, by the way, that's independent in the cloud, which enables applications from AWS or your customers' applications to read the data directly from the object store without change. Okay, that's another unique quality that this new application has.
So the data can be rehydrated effectively into a file system on AWS?
I wouldn't say, well, it's the metadata that's created in ONTAP is preserved when it's moved to the cloud. So there's no rehydration or new metadata created. We're just taking the metadata that the customer created initially on-prem, capturing it, and moving it into a object store that's easily accessible for hyperscaler services or other applications to access. Does that help?
Yeah.
We're going to get into it. So we're going to. There's actually further into the presentation. It's a more detailed look at this, and we'll be able to go into your questions a little bit more detail. Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about primary data, you are talking about everything that your customer already has on premises.
Yes.
Or just the primary data like databases, virtual machines, and files are not.
Anything that is initially created in the business is fair game to be protected and services to be performed on it.
This also implies that by adopting this solution, potentially in a very short time, your customer will have a huge data repository on the cloud and relatively small repository on premises, because we start moving, backup, archiving, compliance, data disaster recovery, and so on. Means that you have several copies of the same data on the cloud.
Yes. We're finding our customers have a spectrum of desire to move their data to the cloud. Some have maybe 90% of it on-prem, and then they protect it. 90% might be protected on-prem, maybe 10% goes to the cloud because they're not totally comfortable with the cloud. Other customers, as Dave alluded to, flip that equation where they like moving most of their data to the cloud. So there's a full spectrum of customers as far as how much is on-prem and how much is in the cloud. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Now, a little bit closer look at NDAS. So this is the NDAS components in the cloud. We have the orchestrator itself. There is a catalog for indexing the data itself and the metadata. And there's obviously the object store itself where the data is moved to. So the orchestrator orchestrates workflows for the customer to enable them to move the data on-prem and into the cloud, and also enables them to search the data and find the data in the cloud through a very easy a Google-like search window, and I'll show you that in a second. So a typical workflow in the early days of NDAS, if you look at the bottom of the screen here, is you start with a primary system where you capture your data initially. You leverage SnapMirror, and this is all under the scenes, by the way. The customer is not exposed to this. We abstract that, okay? But use Snap Center to move the data and back it up and replicate it to a secondary system. And then through the extension of SnapMirror, something we call copy to cloud, the data and the metadata are moved to AWS into the object store and into the catalog for indexing. So this is one of the key initial workflows in NDAS, to be followed later by a direct primary to cloud workflow also. So not all customers want to back up to a secondary. They like to go directly to the cloud, and NDAS will handle that also. Now, this gives the customer a number of benefits. You'll see in the UI, it facilitates fast business outcomes for our customers. The desire here is you don't need to go to Cliff Notes. You don't need to go to ONTAP certification training to do this. You simply need to back up data. We show you where it is. We auto-discover it. You click the data that you want to back up. You need to tell us how frequently you want it to back up. Click, click, and it's in the cloud. Just as simple as that. You'll see that when Charlotte gets up. When data moves out of your infrastructure, security is a concern, and we realize that. So the data is encrypted at rest in ONTAP on the customer's on-site infrastructure. The transport also encrypts the data, so it's encrypted in flight, and when it lands in the object store in AWS, it's also encrypted inside the object store. As I alluded to earlier, when the data ends up in the object store, it's not only the data, but the metadata itself. So we are able to, without ONTAP being present, duplicate the look of a file system within the object store. And this is important for applications that need to read the data. Rather than having to take the data out of the object store for every specific application and tailor it for that application to be able to read it, NDAS will simply provision a very small piece of middleware that allows the application to read data like it normally does. We'll do a simple translation to serve up the data from the object store directly without it having to be rehydrated, as you say, into a different form for every specific application.
Middleware lives on the application machines that want to talk to the data? Or
No, it will live in the cloud.
But that's what I mean. But
yeah, okay.
It's a service that you have in between servers, like a file server saying, pretend this object store is my disk, you're the mount point, and I'm publishing, well, not NFF.
Yes, so there'll be a workflow in NDAS. The customer will say, I need to
connect this to this.
This EMR service from one of the particular EMR applications with AWS, it needs to read this data. Right. And then we may set that up, middleware up in AWS Lambda and have it trigger when the EMR is ready to read the data. And the data is just read seamlessly.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And you'll see in the demonstration, to find data once it's moved to the cloud, if you know how to use Google, you'll know how to find data with this product. And you'll see that in a moment. And finally, the level of granularity of the data movement will start off as files, volumes, and LUNs, both from a movement perspective and a search and restore. In later versions, we'll present a level of granularity that includes applications themselves, like an Oracle database, for example, or an SQL database, and virtual machines. Okay.
Joe,
yes, sir.
Could you just explain the relationship between what data might look like on my source location and what it might look like in the bucket? And I mean, for example, will I see a snap of a file share looking like one bucket? Will I see multiple in a bucket? Will they be divided up? Will I have any way of working out what's in that bucket to work out what the data came from? Or will it just be one amorphous blob of individual blocks?
There's two questions to that. Is how does it physically look, and what's the architecture of the data underneath, and what's presented to the customer? What's presented to the customer is just data. Our target customer doesn't have any desire to get to that level of sophistication that you ask. But the data is a typical object store format. There are large blocks of data that include not only the data and the metadata itself, and then you have the catalog paired with that to present the level of intelligence that NDAS needs to interpret the data and find it for you and what have you. But from the user's perspective, we'll simply present the data at the level of granularity I showed you here on the previous slide.
So let me give you an example.
Okay.
So imagine I created a file share and I backed it up and I've got snapshots from it, and it was on a system that was there from 3 years ago, which has since been decommissioned and is now gone. And then I've got something else there, which is just from a year ago or something like that. Again, it might or might not be there. And I'm looking at the size of this bucket growing year after year after year, and I'm trying to work out what on earth is keeping that bucket full of data. That's one angle. The second angle is, if that stuff was deleted 3 years ago, how do I know what I've got in that bucket to be able to work out that it's something from a system that's long since gone? or may have got long since gone, because I might be keeping this stuff forever.
Yeah, that history that you alluded to in your example is preserved, all the snapshot versions. And so when you look for xyz.pdf, for example, in the search box, you'll see this in a moment, that entire history of that file will be present for you to look at. So even though the system went away, all that history is preserved. And now to restore it or to reuse it will allow you to either take the whole volume that thing resided into, or volumes, and bring it back to any independent location. Not just if the original system is gone, it can be an alternate location that it could be restored to, or it could be if you're looking for a specific snapshot or a timestamp in the file, that'll be presented to you, and you can also restore it to an independent location also.
So the catalog will exist independent of my data.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
So the catalog will exist independent of my original source data platforms,
Yes.
effectively.
Yes.
So if I do this kind of search, or more in general, I don't know, a query on this huge catalog, can I create a new bucket from the original bucket, the original catalog? So if I want an application that accesses
Subset of the data.
a subset of the data,
Right.
can I do it?
You can access a subset of the data from a workflow perspective. Physically creating a separate bucket is something that is on our radar from a roadmap perspective, but not present in the first release. The reason for the additional bucket is for security reasons or some other isolation use case.
I mean, it could be something for like legal hold, right? You do a search and then say, hey, I want to keep it somewhere else.
I see.
You know,
Yes,
that sort of
yes,
things.
Yes.
Yeah, but there are several startups now working on this concept to create a view of the data to give to a specific application, maybe a big data set that you don't want to mess up with the original data. You just want a copy.
But
a view
shouldn't be a different bucket then.
Sorry?
A view is just a view, right?
I
It's just like
understand.
transient.
Well, you create a different bucket and then you delete the bucket at the end of the job. You know,
There are requirements
you can
like
do
this
it
coming
in
up.
several ways.
Yeah.
But
So our hope is that, remember, this is designed to be at the data level and the application level. So given the fact that the metadata is intelligently paired with the data in the object store, and that the applications can read the data independently, those different views, there could be a compliance application that gives you a legal hold.
Right.
It'll be able to access the data and directly and give you a compliance hold or a legal hold type of workflow. Another person may, like the baseball team, may access the same data and present it in a different way, but there's no need to replicate the object stores. The applications present the different use cases to their users without having to replicate object stores or rehydrate the data for specific purposes. There may be other reasons to replicate the object store, and we'll look into that. But in the early days, we're hoping that the UI, UX, and the applications present the data in different forms without having to replicate the data per use case.
Okay, because I'm actually thinking about like GDPR in Europe, right? I mean, there will be reasons for you to go and say, hey, I need to replicate it to a different region, you know.
Yes. Okay.
yeah, you could have also the opposite problem. So you want everything except the data that belongs to somebody.
Right.
Yes.
And then you need a copy of the data. You know,
Of course.
To expound on that, there are use cases where the data needs to be pre-filtered before it's moved. In some cases, where it's left on premise and not moved to the cloud. So there's a myriad of different ways to either filter the data or present the data.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
But is it also API accessible? So can I write on top of this search, can I then write something to move the data if I need it?
Yeah, ONTAP itself and all our future work is RESTful API based. So in later versions of the product, we'll look into exposing the API, the cloud data movers, a request we get, for example, to people who want to do their own customized things, but not in the early days of the product.
Okay.
But that certainly is a design goal.
So the solution can effectively attach to any ONTAP system located anywhere and do a snap mirror extract of the data from it?
You'll see yes, is the answer to your question. So because it resides in the cloud, Okay, you simply point at it, and as long as the ONTAP system is compliant with it, and we'll get into what that means.
With credentials and all that stuff.
Yeah, for example, the ONTAP system that's paired, the instance that's paired with AWS has to be 9.5. And then the fan-in relationships to that 9.5 system have to be 9.3 or later. Assuming that that's the case, any ONTAP system, whether it's an AFF system, whether it's a FAS system, Cloud ONTAP, ONTAP Select, it will work just fine.
And can you also use an on-premises object store, an S3 compatible object store? So if I don't want to store my data on Amazon.
Yes. So the question is, there are some customers that like the flexibility and the capability of an object store, but maybe have security concerns for the cloud and want it on-prem. So NetApp has a number of solutions that help with that, one of them being StorageGrid comes to mind, and StorageGrid is a roadmap target for us for object stores that will be on-prem. Remember, this is a hybrid cloud solution, so it's cloudy in a number of different ways. Cloudy in that there's a cloud target, cloudy in that it's simple for business outcomes, but also cloudy in that we need to create simple solutions on-premise for our customers to have security concerns, and that's certainly a target.
The idea is, if I have a cheaper option instead of Amazon, because we are talking about archiving and stuff,
yes,
and I want to use a different S3 endpoint. Anyway, so even if I want the flexibility to choose my S3 endpoint.
Yeah, we agree with you, and hopefully you'll see with the interface that's something that is relatively easy to add on as we go.